What's up? I'm Tim.
I'm Marcus.
And this is Moontoast TV. Today we are joined by rock legend Dez Dickerson, former guitar player for Prince, producer in his own right, also worked as VP of A&R, long history in the music industry, and now extending into social media as well. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different stuff and hopefully give some takeaway knowledge for everybody who's watching. Dez, give us a little bit of just background history of your time in the music industry and kind of how you came to be where you are now.
Absolutely. Well, started on the performing side, back in the days when you really didn't think in terms of, getting record deals and being an international, multinational conglomerate in and of yourself. And we just played music because we loved it. And we played music because when we saw people doing it and making a living at it, it was intriguing. So I kind of matriculated through that. And over time, after about 9 years of doing it, kind of on the local, regional, grassroots level, had an opportunity to join forces with this guy named Prince. And at that point, because he did have the label deal, because he did have the machine behind him, we were able to take what we love to do and let them put their big magnifying glass on it and do it on a much broader scale. And really never knowing, having dreams that it would achieve what it did, but during the process, you don't really realize what's actually happening. I mean, it was, in hindsight, being able to look back and go, wow, that was amazing. At the time, it was just some young kids having fun.
That's awesome. So now you've made kind of a transition into, or an evolution, I should say, into some social work with Pavilion Group. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the DNA of the Pavilion Group, and specifically Pavilion Synergies, which is our strategic social marketing agency, really is derived from the music business. In the music entertainment business, the art and science of creating differentiation and attracting attention, converting people from just being aware of you to being passionately committed as a fan and then remaining a fan, hopefully for decades to come, is something we've been doing in the music business since before there were personal computers, much less, the web or the social space. So for me, it's more a matter of having been in the music business for so long and being sort of intimate with that process and the psychographics of it and the sort of neuromarketing aspects of how you move people, how you influence people toward decisions, and how you influence people in such a way that they feel good about the decisions that they're making, and then you gain trust with them, is something that's extremely applicable to the social space. We believe that audience is the only metric that matters, and what business has been built more on the art of building and retaining an audience than the music business. So that's what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why we're excited to kind of be working with you guys now and have you kind of digging into the Moontoast platform as well and have the strategic partnership in place. You mentioned a second ago about how having the record deal gave a magnifying glass on what you guys were doing, and they were able to really boost the awareness, I guess, outside of the local and regional area onto more of a national and even eventually global scale. So what are your thoughts just on how social has maybe broken down some of those walls and those barriers and make it maybe more accessible for people to become known?
I think that the social space has provided tools and a means and a framework for people to do, again, what we've always done anyway. It's always been about, I tell artists this, if you have an audience, you have a career. If you have a record deal, you have a contractual obligation that may or may not result in a career. If you have a hit, you have an experience that may or may not result in a career. But the key to actually building and sustaining a career is the ability to draw straight lines between you who make music and the people who love what you do. And the social space provides the absolute ideal dream platform for doing that, because it breaks down all the barriers that used to exist and creates this seamless interface between artist and fan. And now it has to be approached cleverly enough so that, again, people don't feel pushed, manipulated, used, whatever.
Right.
But the whole key to the art of creating fans is recognizing that people become fans after they experience a moment with you as an artist, either through a song, through a performance, through a video, hearing you on the radio, whatever the case might be. They experienced a moment. What makes them a fan is the quest to relive that moment again and again and again.
Yeah.
So that's what it provides.
That's really interesting, because I think that like can translate over to brands too. Like
Absolutely.
you start looking at experiential marketing and just providing kind of a cool event, really. Like if you look into the video game space, just some of those marketing campaigns, whether it's the Halo I Love Bees campaign that I'm a big fan of, the way that brands can actually take that and provide those experiences, I think social makes it a lot easier to do that as well.
Absolutely. And that's why we branched out of the music industry sector and began to look at ourselves as being a strategic social marketing resource just across the board, because everything and everyone is a brand. You know, growing Lady Gaga's audience really isn't that much different than growing, you know, the Old Spice audience. Well, okay, it is different, but you get my point.
Yeah, sure. So you were mentioning that, you know, the only metric that's important is audience, and that's very much aligned with how we think about social and how it shifted things. You know, the metric that we've coined is called return on fan.
Absolutely. Which I love, by the way.
Thanks. You know, what I'm wondering is, how do you communicate with non-music brands who have been used to having much more control over the marketing message in traditional media, and are looking at social media? You know, they've learned about the listening piece, they've learned about the conversation piece, but they don't necessarily know how to drive, you know, an audience to activate, or how to actually build a meaningful audience, you
Absolutely.
know, one that they can actually measure. Or how do you even measure that? I mean, you know, how do you go about talking to those brands about making that transition and leveraging some of the things that the music industry has known for so long?
It's a great question. The first thing we try to do is draw a distinction between coercion and influence, because marketing 1.0, the first stage of mass marketing, was the push era. And we went from 1.0 to 2.0, where we moved the push ethos into the digital space, but it was still the same mentality. We were still trying to push people and coerce people into making decisions. and
From
doing
billboards
things.
to banner ads.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So the idea is to first kind of bring them behind the velvet rope and get them to see the difference between coercion and influence in the social space. And I believe in marketing in general, the thing that makes for effective marketing is the art and the science of creating influence, really earning influence, and then moving people toward those decisions in such a way that you're the catalyst for the action in a participatory way, rather than, again, getting behind people and shoving them in a direction. So getting them to see that their brand is an organic relationship, potentially. It's not just selling goods and services anymore. It's about people having an organic relationship with your brand. So just as I don't keep friends by controlling them, I don't keep customers by controlling them either. And the recognition, I mean, you know, I know you guys have heard this said too, that, well, the difference is it's like deer hunting, except now the deer have guns. I think people focus too much on the aspect of, you know, the consumer having the megaphone now rather than the brand, but that can be a good thing. Again, if you've made nice with the consumer, so the things they say through the megaphone, first of all, you've curated. You're not just reacting. You're just not a victim in the transaction, but you've curated and you've seeded that. And secondly, they multiply and create momentum for your efforts. Again, in the same way that an artist is broken. When people are talking about a song, when people are talking about, you know, a tour, a show that they saw, that marketing effort and expenditure that a label or a management company or even a band themselves expended is just exponentially multiplied. So that's the approach that we take. So one of the things that we've adopted as sort of a proactive tool for in going back, circling back and kind of addressing Marcus's question or comment earlier, that, you know, how do you kind of move people from sort of marketing 1.0 thinking in terms of presenting this new vision, this new revolution to brands and businesses and companies that are accustomed to thinking in terms of the push, in terms of thinking of it in that methodology and so on. We have kind of centered in on identifying 2 or 3 sort of disruptive kinds of ideas that we've managed to massage and package in a very sort of a gentle and non-threatening way, so that we look to address certain things. One of them being the mentality, this house of thoughts that kind of guards this idea of throwing things against the wall to see what sticks as being a viable marketing strategy. No, that's like, Powerball tickets as a financial growth strategy, you know what I mean? So for us, it's about identifying certain thoughts. There are certain key thoughts that if you can get people to kind of, hand you the keys in that area, then people actually begin to get really excited about this concept of marketing 3.0. The light goes on, they realize, well, no wonder. The whole concept of ROI, which, by the way, one of our disruptive thoughts is that ROI is dead. That there's really, we keep using a measure that's no longer germane. It's like, it would be like thinking of air travel in terms of having to have enough buckets of oats so that your plane makes it from Nashville to Minneapolis. Well, no, we don't have horses and buckets of oats anymore. We have this thing called jet fuel, and we have airplanes, and it's an extreme analogy, I know, but pretty fitting.
Absolutely.
So, okay, a little bit of a curveball.
Yeah.
So you were talking about how it's really important to map the DNA. You said the very 1st thing that a brand has to know, brand or artist, is who they are.
Absolutely.
So, and I think, some of the viewers will definitely want to hear your answer to this. What happens when the brand or artist says, okay, I know who I am, and who I am doesn't get involved in all this social stuff?
And you're right, that does come up. And the thing, and again, this is probably one of our disruptive ideas, is that whether you're defining it or not, your brand is being perceived and defined by other people. So you can adopt that mentality if you want to, but what you're doing is handing this blank slate to other people and say, here, what do you think we are?
Right, there's a conversation going on somewhere.
Right,
people
exactly.
are talking. Why don't you just jump in and join them?
Exactly.
And
that's
control and curate that.
That's been one of the things that, in dealing with artists over a long period of time, that is a typical blind spot. Sometimes it's the mentality of, I don't know, I can be what you want me to be. Well, no, that's not going to work, because there's something about what you are intrinsically. It may not be earth-shattering, intergalactically unique, but it's vitally important that either you define you or someone else will. And if you leave it to other people, there's going to be mass confusion, and you're going to be the loser. So
that was a good.
That's a good, that was a good answer too.
Swung for the fences.
Yeah, he did well on that.
Good deal. I think that ran through all of my questions.
Yeah, mine too, for sure. Do you have a parting note for the Moontoast TV?
I wanted to give you an
audience?
opportunity to tell people how to get in touch with you.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's Pavilion Synergies, the Pavilion Group. You can go to our website, which is pavilion-group.com. You can email us from there. Essentially, that's probably the best way to get in touch with us, other than, I'm usually at Fido a couple times a week, or in the Cool Springs area, I can be found at the Starbucks. No, not really. But that's the best way to reach out.
Cool, and we'll post
touch
that
us.
in the show notes, too, on YouTube. Cool.
So
Des,
very cool.
Thank you. From
Hey, it's been my
Prince of the
pleasure.
Revolution to the Social Revolution. Glad to have you here, man.
Awesome.
My pleasure. Always.
Thanks,
Always
man.
good to see you.
Thanks, man.